And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here back. And today we have another episode of Waffle Wrap Up number 2 as we go through some of the state league action out in WA. Joining me, one of my experts, one of those guys that keeps an eye on the Waffle a ton, not only because he's got a website, but he is a massive Swan District supporter, Mr. Ric Gauci. Rick, how are you doing, sir?
Morning, Donnie. How you going, mate? I'm doing well. And how's yourself?
I'm not doing too bad. It's slowly starting to warm up here. Summer is starting to really kick up big time over here, which I know that is always fun. And with you, the time difference is always fun. So an early good morning for you here. So
Yeah.
hopefully we will try to keep you awake during this. But I think there's some fun things to talk about. So we haven't talked in a little bit. Unfortunately, I've had some things go on personally, so that's why we're a little bit later than normal. So we have 5 rounds to go through in the men's and 4 rounds to go in the women. So here we go. Really quickly, Rick, looking at it, you've kind of taken a look at both ladders. Real quick thoughts of the last 5 rounds of footy, both in the men and the 4 rounds of the women.
Yeah. You did mention the weather. Firstly, it's getting a lot colder down here. But I just spent 4 nights up north of the states where it was nice and warm. So getting back to the cold. But anyway, the first 5 rounds of the waffle in the men's, it's been a interesting few rounds of footy. Unfortunately, the top 5 or 6 teams or top 6 teams have sort of broken away a little bit from the bottom four sides based on a few results there. Claremont sitting on top of the ladder, they're looking pretty strong with some solid victories. Peel also with the back of the strength of their Fremantle listed players are doing very well, and they've had their equal best start ever at 4-1 at the moment in their 26 years of waffle footy. So that's great for the Thunder team and spectators. Probably the low light of the competition has been the West Coast Eagles. Their injuries at the AFL level have really depleted their stocks at the waffle level. So far as having to call on Will Schofield, who's been retired from footy for a couple of years, for a couple of games, and a former Sandover medalist, Kane Mitchell, who has also been out of the game for a little while, to fill in just to make up some numbers and to add a bit of experience to their team. They've copped 300-point thrashings in a row and then a 97-point defeat in the last round, which stopped them from equaling Peel Thunder's record of 4 games in a row of losing by 100 or more points. So they are struggling. Hopefully, they start to get some players back over the next few weeks to make them a bit more competitive. Um, Other teams, South Fremantle, struggling to get back their 8-point deficit from the penalty of salary cap breaches from last season. They have 0 premiership points despite having won 2 games. So they're a little bit off the pace at the moment. I think that may be a hurdle, a bit too far for them to catch up. My team, Swans, have been pretty unlucky. We lost the first 3 games by a combined total of 12 points, which is the lowest ever. No team has ever lost the first 3 games by a small amount as Swans have. They actually break their own record. They did it in 2019, lost the first 3 games by 20 odd points. I think it's 23 points. So frustrating first few weeks for my Swans. A few injuries to their key midfielders, Anderson, Fisher, and Clark, have really cost them probably that drive out of the midfield. I think West Perth is pretty much doing what expected, and East Perth have sort of shot up the ladder, as have Subi, who's probably my surprise packet at the moment, at sitting at 4-1. So it's been some good results, a few close games, a few blowouts, particularly with the Eagles side. But I think it's still going to be an interesting season. I think there's still, definitely 6 teams in it, and I don't think Swans are too far off the pace if they can pull a few victories up out of their sleeve over the next few weeks. Over in the Women's League, Claremont are still sitting pretty on the top of the ladder there. So they're actually having a very good year this year, sitting on top of both ladders at the moment. But they did have their first non-victory last weekend against East Fremantle, who managed to steal a draw. Claremont sitting pretty on the top. Souths are still doing really well, which is which is great to see. Again, are only in the 3rd season this year, and they're sitting second with 6 wins and a draw from their 8 games. So they're looking pretty good. And there's a bit of a logjam then. I think there's Subi, East Fremantle, Swans, who, since we last chatted when they were 0-4, have gone on awesome 4 game winning streak and now sit just half a game out of the top four. So they're still in with a chance. And it's probably our West Perth. Peel, who are usually very strong at the women's team, they're sitting seventh with only 2 wins, and East Perth, as expected in their first year, are barely hitting the scoreboard in their 8 losses, conceding 10 times as many points as they've scored. So, but over the last few weeks, Claremont still continuing their winning way. So yeah, it's an interesting competition in the women's, and it's probably a bit closer at this stage than the men's league as far as the finals
Yeah,
race goes.
it'll definitely be interesting. Like I said, this with Swans only being 2 points back, the fact that all four teams at the top of the ladder in the women's all have a draw. So there's at least one draw
Mm.
for all four of the top teams. So it leaves that little 2 point buffer there. So we'll go back to it. We'll go through each of the first 5 rounds really quickly. We'll talk about game of the round, which, as you kind of said, I think Swans may be in many of the games of the rounds because of their close actions. I don't like to bring up when they don't play well, Rick, but I think it's hard not to say that they're playing competitive games. So we'll go to round one, the rematch of the premiership last year sees Claremont change the result. Game one, 56-42, a nice little 14-point win there. I remember texting you because I found out this final score is East Perth just nip Swans by one, 80-79. Peel just edge over East Fremantle 79-75. South Frio get West Coast before all of the drama happens with the injuries 102-59, and Subi with a nice little impressive win over Perth 81-55. Let's go back to it. I know I hate going back to 1 point losses, but this was a tough one for you, sir. The game of the round has to be East Perth Swans. How impressive that they played a really good game, just fell 1 point short.
Yeah, it was a good game. East Perth probably controlled the game, I think, most of the way. Swans third quarter, we kicked 5 goals to 1. Were probably was our best quarter, obviously, of the match there, and really started to change the momentum of the game. We hit the lead at the end of the third quarter, got out to a 9 point lead from memory in the fourth quarter before East Perth level the scores. I think that we got a point in front, then they hit a couple of points. And yeah, they scored a point in the last probably 30 seconds of the game. So it could have gone either way. I think East Perth probably deserved the win based on the overall part of the game, overall review of the game. But I think Swans were pretty unlucky, again, just to miss out by 1 point in that game. But so I guess one of the key things for the WAFL of the first round of fixtures was the attendance figures.
Mm-hmm.
It was the highest aggregated crowd for a non-WA day long weekend. So we have a WA day, which is over June, celebrating the foundation of the state. And that historically is the largest crowd attendance over a round of fixtures. But this was the first round since 2009, which wasn't a WA. So it's the highest aggregated crowd since round 6, 2009, which was an Anzac Day weekend. So that was pretty good. And it was the third highest aggregate of attendance since 2000 for round one. So a good start to the season for the crowds and for the WAFL. And some pretty close results, like you mentioned. 3 of the 4 games were decided by a couple of goals or less.
Mm-hmm.
And West Coast put in their best performance of the season, going down by just 7 goals to South Fremantle. When I say just 7 goals compared to the next few weeks, you'll see what I mean by the word just 7 goals.
Yeah, unfortunately, this next round was the one that popped my eyeballs because I heard about it and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to watch the highlights of this one. So we'll jump to round two. First game again. The pain continues, unfortunately, for Swans. A 4 point loss in a game that really the behinds kicked were the reason that they lost, that this game was changed. 7-15 to 7-11, 57-53, a 4 point loss there. East Perth continues to roll on another win, 112-89 over Subiaco. Peel with an impressive 65-point win over Perth, 77-12. Claremont continues their winning ways, beating South Fremantle 76-28. And then the game that I think everybody in Australia heard about, 34-13, 212 points for West Perth as they beat the West Coast Eagles by 217-48. I remember this. I remember hearing about this, and I could not believe that scoreline. I was like, that has to be a typo. There's no way. And I went back and saw 34-13. That is ridiculous. but that just shows you how depleted West Coast is. But I don't want to stay on that because unfortunately I hate staying on those low lights. And unfortunately, again, the best game of the round was your Swans, again, falling just a little bit short to East Fremantle. I mean, can you explain to me why 26 behinds kicked? I mean, was it pressure or was it just both teams were a little off kicking for goal?
But I think also Asia Mantle, there was a bit of a breeze kicking down to the Guildford end of the ground at Baston there, which can be tricky from time to time. I think I did mention after round one, East Perth would be the better side against Swans, but I think we could have stolen that game and it would have been fine. But I think this game here, Asia Mantle, they 1 goal 6 in the first quarter. And they didn't miss hard shots. They could have easily been 5 or 6 goals in front at their first quarter, and the game was pretty much all over. So I think from memory, Ishu Mantle had missed a lot more easy shots. I think Swans had a few rush points and a few difficult shots, and their kicking probably wasn't as bad as Ishu Mantle's. Obviously, Ishu Mantle kicked 4 more points than Swans. So in that aspect, obviously, Ishu Mantle's kicking was worse, but we were very lucky to be in that game. Ishu Mantle sort of died out in the last quarter, which has been a little bit of a theme for the Sharks over the first 5 rounds. Their last quarters haven't been as strong as at least their first halves. So I think Swans, that would have been a big steal if we had got that game. So I probably wasn't as disappointed after the round two game as the round one. And then also after round three. But we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, the game of the round definitely was Swans and East Fremantle. There's a couple of points in this round of fixtures. You mentioned the West Perth West Coast game. West Perth, their third highest ever score. It was the highest score since 2010. It was the biggest winning margin since the same time. It was the third biggest win for West Perth. Claremont that round also registered their 1,000th win in the WAFL, which was a bit of a milestone for them. And Peel kept Perth to 1 goal 6, which is the lowest score ever kicked against Peel in their 26 years. So a couple of breakout scores in those low lights games. And East Perth getting a good win over Subiaco, and they haven't beaten Subiaco very much over the last few years as well. So that was good for the Royals, which kept them undefeated after the first 2 rounds.
All right, we jump to round three where we see Subiaco get the upset over previously undefeated Claremont 94-70, a 24-point win. South Fremantle get another win 92-48 over Peel Thunder. East Perth knock off Perth 115-47. The pain continues for West Coast 161-53. They're getting better. Getting better.
Slightly, yeah.
Slightly, not much, unfortunately. And then again, another cracker. And as you said, another close loss, unfortunately, this time by only 7, 81-74. West Perth knock off the Swans. So again, sir, unfortunately, best game of the round happens to be another close loss by Swans. They're staying in games, they're being competitive. A 7-point loss here. What would you say is the reason that they fell at home to West Perth?
Well, I think it come down to a bit of experience with the players. Swans have got a quite a young side compared to West Perth, and I think that probably ended up being the difference at the end. The second and third quarters, I think it's where Swans lost the game. We got off to a great start, 29 points in front at one stage, early in the second quarter, and I think West Perth's experienced players and the depth. I think in the midfield, we mentioned that Swans have had a few injuries. They lost Sam Fisher early in the third quarter in this game. We're already without Anderson and Clark. Anderson hasn't played all year, but Clark was a big loss in the second game against East Fremantle. So the midfield, up against West Perth, who've got the best midfield going around. Black, Meadows, Nelson, a young fellow, Nathan Murray, sort of stepped up and had a breakout game with 30-odd possessions and 3 goals. So their players really kicked in that second half. Keitel, who kicked 10 against the Eagles in the previous round, kicked 5 and was pretty dominant when the ball went forward to him. And Swans just couldn't keep up in the last quarter. West Perth just pulled away. Swans got a late goal to bring the margin back to 7 points, but that was probably the most disappointing game of the 3 early losses for Swans, where they did control the game for large parts, and really probably should have won that game. West Perth's experience, I think, got them over the line in the end. unfortunately. But yeah, that was definitely the game around. Subi was a bit of an upset against Claremont, although looking at the ladder, that's the only game Claremont have lost this year. So it's pretty good for them. And Subi also sitting at 4-1, which is a pretty good record for them.
Yep. So it's interesting that at the top of the top of the ladder, at least by percentages, it's only losses to a fellow team at 4-1. So it'll be fascinating to see
Yep.
how it goes. Again, not every team has played everybody, so we'll kind of see how that wraps out. But a fascinating round of footy. We jump to round four. Start off East Frio get a 105-77 win over Perth. A cracking game between Peel and East Perth, 86-53. Subi get a 21-point win over West Perth, 66-45. The Swans get their win over South Fremantle, 88-70. And Claremont has their smashing of West Coast, 154-43. It's becoming a little bit of a tradition now, unfortunately, with West Coast, but at least they're scoring a little bit more. They're keeping the scores down, so we got to give them that. But again, by looking by scores, I mean, I feel like this is almost a Swans podcast as much as it is a WAFL podcast, because it seems like they're always in the best game. So Swans get an 18-point win over South Fremantle. I mean, you got to smile a little bit. The black and white get the first win of the season.
Yes, and I wasn't there to see it either. I was up north watching my daughter jump out of an aeroplane. But anyway, yes, it was a good win. Again, if you look at the scores, we kicked the first 5 goals of the game. So really, we were in front right at the start. South Fremantle did peg the margin back in that last quarter to a couple of goals. So I did get a little bit tense there watching that game in the car coming home. But we did hang in there, fortunately, and get our first victory since 2014 down at the port. So it's been a while since Swans tasted victory down there. The margin probably indicated that it may have been the closest game of the round. I think West Perth and Subi, that was only 21 points difference there. So that was also a pretty good game from all reports up at Arena Joondalup. So there's some good games that round. Peel Thunder and East Perth. East Perth threw the game away with the inaccurate kicking, 6 goals, 17. So, an accuracy rate of about 26%. So they probably should have won that game, having 23 scoring shots to 21. But Peel, kicking straight. Good kicking is good football, as they say. So East Perth probably kicking themselves. Well, they might have missed it that day, but kicking themselves for their inaccurate kicking for goals to lose to Peel in that one. But one interesting thing after the ladder in round eight, so after round four, was eight teams out of the 10 had a percentage of over 100 points, which had never happened before in the WAFL. So only 10 teams have been in the league for only three years now. This is the third. Oh, this is the I think third or fourth season. Trying to do some counting on my hands. I think it's the fourth season West Coast have been in there. So 8 out of the 10 teams have a percentage over 100, and it happened once, or it happened 3 times in a 9-team competition. That 7 out of the 9 teams had a percentage over 100 points. But really, percentages at this stage are pretty much skew with the results against the Eagles, and we'll see after round 5. There's some teams with very high percentages because they've been able to pad that with big wins over the West Coast, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. So we jump to it. Last round that we have not discussed, round 5, see some absolute crackers. The first one right off the bat, Claremont only get a 7-point win over East Perth, 91-84. The double East is going to throw me off one of these days. So I do apologize. I'm trying. I'm looking at the logos and I'm going, okay, got to remember which one's which. So yeah, Claremont get the win over East Perth, 91-84, 7-point win, a cracking game to start off the round. Perth get a impressive 124-27 win over West Coast. Again, the ceremonial butt kicking of West Coast continues. West Perth beats East Fremantle 72-57 in another cracking game. Subi get a 12-point win over South Fremantle, and unfortunately Peel put a little bit of the hurt on Ric's Swans, 118-56. Sir, for the first time in a round, unfortunately, it is not Swans that has the game of the round, and it's hard not to argue a really tough clash between Claremont and East Frio only goes down to 7 points. So hard to say that this is not the game of the round. Just looking at some of the statistics here, just wanted to go through it. But I mean, literally, this is kind of one of those games. Claremont survived this as East Fremantle for most of this game. It wasn't until the fourth quarter that Claremont actually takes the lead. So you got to say, this is one of those. Did it get away from East Perth more than Claremont won it?
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes your teams can get off to a good start and get a bit complacent, and I think that may have happened with East Perth. I did catch the last quarter of this game. So I flicked over the channel because again I was away last weekend. I decided not to watch the last quarter of the Peel and Swans game because that was not looking good. Oh, actually no, that was on the Sunday, so I lie. But yeah, Claremont. It's been a few days away. It's I'm getting old and my memory's not as good as it used to be. But no, Claremont definitely coming back from 31 points down at quarter time. It's the biggest margin they've overcome at quarter time against East Perth in the history. So that was a big result for Claremont. Um, yeah, interesting. East Perth sort of stopped in that last quarter. Claremont did take the lead. I think East Perth were able to snatch it back, and Claremont just hung in there. With a couple of good goals late in the game, and yeah, definitely a great game of footy that one to watch. And it's good to watch the game as a neutral. Your heart's not really barracking for anybody, and just to see the teams and it was a great result in the end for the footy, and I think it was probably definitely one of the best games of the season. The closeness of it, and that could have gone down either way, um,
Mm-hmm.
with a couple of minutes to play. And well done for Claremont for hanging on there. I probably would have liked East Perth to win, just to keep them up there because they've been a bit down with teams like Swans and East Fremantle over the last few years, and it's be good to see them back up the top towards the top of the ladder. But they're still fighting for a spot in the five, and hopefully be knocking down the door come finals time. The West Perth and East Fremantle game, on all accounts, is also a good game. East Fremantle, again, 7 goals, 14. They're kicking for goals is really letting them down at the moment, and
Mm-hmm.
they could have easily got that win at the WACA. Again, West Perth's midfield with Luke Meadows best on ground there. It's just again a strong side, and East Fremantle maybe just missing a little bit of a zip. They've struggled to replace Blame Boakhurst, who was the Sandover medalist from last year, who injured his knee towards the end of the season, and maybe just that little bit of pace or X factor that they're missing. They're the
Mm-hmm.
Sharks. And Perth, it's a bit of a tricky thing with the team who's, with a percentage of 50 coming into the game can beat the team below them by nearly 100 points. So doesn't say much for obviously where West Coast are. Fortunately, as I mentioned earlier on the podcast, that 97-point result did stop West Coast equaling a record of 4 consecutive games losing by 100 or more points. So their record has stopped at 3 for them, and they didn't pass Peel Thunder's record that they achieved in their very first year back in '97. And for me, the less I say about Swans' game against Peel, the better. But Peel were way too strong, and their AFL listed players really came to the fore. Swans again kicked the first 4 goals of that game, so a bit like the East Perth Claremont game where the team got off to a good start, but Peel's, bigger bodies. I won't say necessarily experience because they're quite a young side as well, but bigger bodies sort of took them over the line, and it was a big win for them in the end of 10 goals over Swans, which um, sort of knocked Swans out of that top 5 race for the meantime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that is going to do it for the first 5 rounds of the Waffle season. We'll talk a little bit more here in a little bit. We'll quickly run over the last 4 rounds from the women since they didn't technically have a round 5. So we will jump to round 6 of the women's comp really quickly, running over it. Subiaco with an impressive 59-2 win over the hapless East Perth Royals. Again, East Perth, kind of like West Coast in the men's, is kind of the proverbial whipping stick, unfortunately, being their first year in. But again, these girls are getting experience. We'll have to see. East Frio get a 53-18 win over Peel. A cracking game between Claremont and South Fremantle, which is kind of one of the teams that I thought has a chance to dethrone Claremont. But Claremont get a 626-point win. No, a 16-point win. If I could do my math quickly, Donnie, 50-34. And then as Rick kind of said, Swans started off not so good, but have rattled off the first of their 4 wins in a row with an impressive 72-21 win over West Perth. Looking at the game of the round, it has to be that Claremont v South Fremantle game. And this is one of those interesting ones where Claremont didn't start off really well, only a goal in the first quarter, and then they kind of hit their groove in the second, kicking 5 kicking 4 goals, one in the second quarter to kind of run out that lead. And then they kind of put it into cruise control. They shut this game down, only giving up 2 goals in the second half. So again, South Fremantle, a very, very tough team. Claremont just a little bit too good. Your thoughts on this? Again, I think this really is Claremont's competition to win. It's can they show up each day and continue to show why they're probably the best team in the WAFL?
Yeah, I think so. They've obviously been a good side from last year as the reigning premiers. So I think they're definitely the team to beat. Souths are definitely pushing up there, and that result really showed that they're competitive with Claremont. So that's good to
Mhm.
see. So maybe it's not all Claremont's yet. The last 2 years, teams have gone through undefeated through the regular season and have not won the premiership. So
Mhm.
the finals is where it matters. But at this stage, Claremont are looking good. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was a good result against South Fremantle.
Yeah, if you look at it when it comes to it, I mean, I think Subi's up there, but East Frio and South Fremantle, I think are the two teams that really I think would potentially be the spoil to Claremont winning the premiership. We jump to round seven, another impressive win by your Swans, 101-12 over East Perth. Subi get a 60-13 win over Peel. The cracking game between, as I said, those two teams fighting to kind of dethrone Claremont as South Fremantle get a 5 point win over East Frio, 34-29. And Claremont with another impressive 43-7 win over West Perth. Looking at this cracking game between South Frio and East Frio, the rivalry, at least in the men's competition, seemed competitive, very, very close. East Fremantle jumped out to a little bit of a lead mid-second quarter, and South Frio kind of drawing it back and was able to get over the line. Some inaccurate kicking for East Fremantle kind of hurt them a little bit with that score line. Is that if that one extra behind goes even, we maybe potentially had another draw in the works. But again, South Fremantle just the tiniest bit too good with a nice little 5 point win over East Frio.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good, interesting results there in that Derby game. It's a good win for South Fremantle. The Derbies, obviously, in the men's are the biggest games in the WAFL. I'm sure in the women's, it's a very similar feeling for the team to win the Derby. So South Fremantle, yeah, getting that win in that very close game. The third quarter there, I think, was the big key with South kicking the 3 goals. So they got them over the line.
All righty, we jump to it. South with their third, with Swans with their third win in a row, with kind of a shocking win over East Fremantle, 56-27. So a little bit of of a thrown of a spur into South Fremantle a little bit with the impressive win there. South Fremantle with a smashing of Peel, 82-8. Another shocker in it, a round of shockers, a couple of upsets as West Perth knock off Subiaco 41-30. And as per usual, Claremont with a nice 85-0 win over East Perth. So we'll go back to it. I have to talk about this because, again, Subi was one of those teams in that top four that I thought potentially had a shot, again, to be that spoil with South and East Frio. But West Perth with a nice little impressive 11-point win in a game that literally it looks like Subi had trouble kicking goals and West Perth was just accurate enough and a huge second quarter kicking 3-2 compared to only 1-1 for Subi. And it really looks like West Perth just kind of held on. The second half, they only kick 2 goals in the entire second half, both in the fourth quarter, but enough to get them over the line. So Subi taking a little bit of a stinging loss here, tough one because this puts Subi back a little bit, especially in the ladder, getting further and further behind a very good Claremont team.
Yeah, this definitely go down as the upset of the season for sure. I think with West Perth getting their first win against Subiaco, all their wins previously have been East Perth and South Fremantle from memory. So big win for the Falcons girls there. And it could well cost Subiaco. With Swans coming hard with 4 wins in a row, Subi may struggle to get a spot in the finals, and this could be a game that could be the difference between them playing finals and not playing finals this season. So, well done, West Perth. It was a great win for them, and start to feel sorry for their East Perth rivals who failed to score against Claremont, and a massive win for the Tiger girls there.
All righty. And then to the last round that we are going to talk about that has been played, we go to round nine and right off the bat, Claremont, a little bit of a shocker here. Claremont, no win as they get a draw with East Fremantle 16-16. And as I kind of said a little bit earlier, off mic a little bit, I think the fact that the under 18 championships might have taken a few talented players away from Claremont, unfortunately, which may have evened this game out a little bit, but both kicked 2-4, 16-16. So this kind of keeps Claremont from pulling away a little bit, but a nice, still impressive 4 points over South Fremantle in the on the ladder. So I don't think they're worried too much, but you have to say this has got to be game of the round, draw. So we'll go through the rest of it. South Fremantle beat West Perth 33-13. Swans with their fourth win in a row, an impressive win over Peel 63-34. And Subiaco bounces back from a disappointing loss to hand West Perth another big loss 47-1. But I want to jump to it. This draw looks absolutely entertaining because it was one of those. Claremont kicks the only goal of the first quarter to take a lead. South Fremantle jump to the lead at the halftime, kicking 2-2 in the second quarter and shutting out Claremont in that second quarter. In the third quarter, Claremont drives back to get it at a draw, and both the at three-quarter time and at full time, both teams were level at scoring. So this was definitely one of those games where it was never more than about 8 points. It looks like it. So I mean, this was a close game, just an absolute cracker here. But again, if you're Claremont, you're not super worried. If you're East Fremantle, you take a lot of positive momentum because you just took a really good Claremont team and came really, really close to not only getting 2 points but getting 4 points as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a close game looking at the quarter by quarter scores. That last quarter, we've been very, very tight. Each side only kicking 1 point each in the last
Mm-hmm.
quarter. So the ball would have been bouncing around all over the field there with a lot of tension in the game. Ishu Mantle, yeah, well done for their girls there to keep the Claremont to 2 goals, which will be their lowest score for the season, and managed to sneak a draw, which could be very handy for the Sharks come finals, to have a bit of confidence knowing that they, regardless whether Claremont had players out or not, you can only play against who you're playing, and might get a bit of confidence if the Sharks do make the finals, and come up against Claremont to maybe get some revenge from last year. So, yeah, well done to Sharks and Claremont. Yeah, as you said, I don't think they would be too concerned with a draw. They're still sitting pretty on top of the ladder there and still looking pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's still Claremont's to one, but we'll discuss that here in a little bit. We'll jump to it. That is it for all the rounds. I know there's a lot of footy to talk about, unfortunately. So, but that was fun. It's really cool to see some of these teams and some of the results has been absolutely fascinating. So we'll jump to this section, burning questions. I gotta find out, Rick, what your kind of thoughts going into this a little bit. So we'll start off. Claremont, Peel, and Subiaco are all 4-1 after the first 5 games. What team do you think has been the most impressive of those three at the top of the table?
Well, for me, Claremont, I expected to be sitting pretty high. So they're not really a surprise for myself. Probably the surprise pack at this stage would probably be Subiaco. Um, their coach, Bo Wardman, has coached them now for, I think, this is the fifth season, and they either become premiers or they miss the finals. So a bit of a scary thought. Subiaco are actually doing well again this year. So, put them down for a premiership the way things go with the Lions. But they are surprising. I didn't think they'd be quite as competitive this year. I thought they'd be sort of mid-table, but 4-1, they're looking pretty good. And Peel, again, the back of their AFL players have had their equal best start to a season ever. And if they win this week, they'll be 5-1 for the first time ever in their 26 years. So they're also looking pretty good. But whether they're a surprise or not, I'm not sure because of the numbers of the AFL players that they've got, and players like Will Brodie running around, who was one of the main midfielders last year in the AFL, is now running around the WAFL and dominating in his couple of games he's played. Yep. So the surprise there is definitely Subi. East Perth are doing well, but I thought they'd probably be out where they are.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think Subi are the ones to keep an eye out.
Awesome. And the second question for the men's, and it goes a little bit of black and white here. So there's an 8 point gap between sixth place Perth and seventh place Swans. Is the gap too big for Swans to make finals, or is it still too early in a long season?
Yeah, I think we might be a little bit early, saying it with one black and one white eye. But and I think Swans lost those first three games, to teams above them on the ladder, or literally three teams above them by a combined total of 12 points. So weren't that far off from being, potentially three wins or even four wins at this stage themselves. So I don't think they're far off the pace. The game against Peel, whether that's going to knock them down, their confidence down a little bit with that 10-goal thrashing on the weekend. I still think they've got a sniff. A lot of hard work to do to catch up. South, I think that two-game hurdle is going to be way too far for them. Still with 0 premiership points at the moment. So hopefully Swans can get up against Claremont this week. Even though Claremont sit pretty good on the top of the ladder, we do play them quite well at Bassendean Oval. So I'm tipping them as an upset this week. I don't always pick Swans, but I think we may be able to get over the line against Claremont this week in a bit of an upset. But I think we need to. We need to get some wins against Claremont and Subi next couple of weeks. A quirk of the fixtures, Swans are the only team that has not played either Perth or West Coast so far this year. So most teams have banked victories against those teams. So if we get a good opportunity against them, and not to say that guaranteed to win against Perth or West Coast, but it would have been good to get a couple of extra easier games than what we've had so far this season. But we played them in the last two rounds, rounds I think 8 and 9. I think we play those two teams, and by that stage, knowing our luck, West Coast will probably have all their injuries back, and they'll probably have their strongest side of the year, and may do what they did to South Fremantle last year. The one time they have a strong team, South ran into them last year and lost by 7 goals against the stacked West Coast side. So that's how the competition is. It's designed like that, I guess. Like it or not, the West Coast and Peel teams are really, their strength is decided by their AFL listed players. But I think the top 6 are the ones fighting for the 5 at this stage, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, we'll have to see again. Long season, as you said. Maybe if you get lucky, you catch West Coast at just the right time. They still haven't got everybody back. You get Perth, get a couple. There's 8 points there. It could change anything. It's a long season. We'll have to see. We'll jump to the women's. Couple real quick questions for the women's. Again, we'd already discussed this a little bit, but Claremont is clearly the best in the competition. I mean, 7-0-1. They still have not been beaten yet. Their only blemish is the draw, which is still pretty impressive. East Fremantle got the draw, so is this Claremont's comp to win, or is East Freo going to take some confidence from that draw and maybe throw a sneaky win over Claremont in the finals?
Yeah, I still think Claremont are well above the rest of the teams. South Fremantle, obviously looking at the ladder again, they've only lost the once themselves, which would have been obviously against Claremont. So they're still there with a show. Again, comes to finals, and I mentioned earlier that the last 2 years, the teams have gone through undefeated. Swans in 21 and East Fremantle 22, undefeated throughout the season, and both didn't come away with the chocolates. So, I think it's still open between Claremont and South. That lost to West Perth for Subi has probably dented them a little bit. But again, I'm not sure of the numbers that they may have been affected with, girls being away or whatever for state duties in under 18s. But it's a pretty close competition. Swansea have come out of nowhere after being 0-4, now 4-4. So, maybe they're not without a shot either. So let's just see. We'll get back together in a few weeks' time, and we'll see what it looks like then. But at this stage, it looks like Claremont and South are probably head and shoulders above the rest at the moment.
Well, you're kind of jumping the gun on me because my next question was Swans have found some wins, 4 wins out of the last. Do you think they sneak into the finals? Do you think they knock out a Subiaco or a South Fremantle if they find a way to slip up once?
Oh, let's say yes. Let's say yes, they will. I probably should say no because after we talked last, they were 0-4 and they actually got them to win the next 4 games. So maybe they won't. But no, let's
Reverse
hope
psychology.
That's it, mate. Yep, that's it. But you have a look at their wins. They've won 4 games, but they've beaten only West Perth, Peel, and East Perth, who sit below them, and obviously that one win against East Fremantle. So if they can pull up a victory against one of the top 3 sides, I think that'll go a long way to getting a spot in the final. So good competition, could go either way there, which is great. It's a lot of interest the last few years in the WAFL women's. It's pretty much there's been 2 standout teams in each of the last probably 3 or 4 seasons. So this year, I think even though Claremont and South have got a bit of a break, I think the other teams can still can still give it a shake, and hopefully my Swannies girls can get up there and get into the finals again.
Well, it'll be interesting. I wanted to look at your remaining schedule, and honestly, looking at it, I think you've got a really good shot. You play West Perth this week in round 10, and round 11, a little bit more difficult with Subiaco, but I think still a possibility there. And round 12, you get East Perth, so at least percentage wise, and looking at that, you at least can go 2-1. The only thing that bugs me, and maybe this is my WAFL app. But unfortunately, right now it does not have Swans with a fourth with a last game of the season. It just has West Perth, East Perth, South Fremantle, and East Fremantle. So the two derbies, but Claremont and Subiaco and a few of the other teams do not play. So I may have to keep an eye on that when it comes to it. The app. I'm trying to figure out why
Mm.
there is not the other two games for the fourth round. I'll maybe have to look that one up, but just in the three games that I see there, I think at worst you go 2-1, and if you somehow can nip Subi, I think you get in. So I'm with you. I think Swans is very much the threat outside, very much a threat to get in. I think West Perth, it's a little bit of a stretch there. They haven't played as well, and especially if Swans get that win this round in round 10. I think Swans is definitely they're in with a crack on this one. They will be the team I will definitely keep an eye on over these last four rounds because Swans could sneak their way in. We'll have to see, can they? Because especially that Subi game will be the make or break game for them if they can get the win on that
Yeah.
one. So that is going to do it for my burning questions. I know a little bit black and white heavy with a couple of the questions, but Swans have been kind of the talk in both in both sides, with the men being so close and then the women running off four in a row and really getting into that finals potential chat. So, for those of you on this that think this is turning into a Swans podcast, I'm not. It wasn't done intentionally. It was just they were the
Yeah.
talk on both sides, at least by record and by the ladder. So we jump into it. I know we don't talk every round, but I love tipping because it's so much fun, especially with the rounds being so interesting. So let's jump into it. Round 6 of the men's competition. You already kind of said this. You still see a Swans upset over Claremont to start off round 6?
Yeah, I'm throwing that out there. My tipping hasn't been doing as well as I hope this year, but I think we might just that game against Peel. Hopefully, they've been given a bit of a stronger week on the track and may get a few players back potentially this week, including Tony Knott, who did a knee last year and is a 279 game veteran, pushing towards 300 games. He's played 3.5 games, I think, in the reserves now. We've got to get him back in the side there, and there's potential that Aidan Clark may be back this week and potentially Anderson. So I'm hoping that those players come back to get a little bit of depth back into the side. But at Bassendean, we've been very difficult to beat there. Only lost once last year there, and we have lost twice this year, but by a combined 11 points. I'm hoping that we'll win. I wouldn't be surprised if, obviously, if we don't. But let's go for Swannies in that one by a slender margin.
I'm one of those. I'm gonna both upset you because I'm gonna tip Claremont, but then I'm gonna explain why. Here's a little bit, and I hope this doesn't happen, but this is I don't know why. Just looking at their previous record, I think this comes down to the fourth quarter. I think this comes down to a final kick. I think being at home should help. You get a chance to catch a Claremont team that maybe could take you a little bit lightly. I think a strong. I think this is under 10 points. I think this is one of those that comes down late. I think Claremont just a little bit too strong, but Swannies are in this one. This is one of those when I say my upsets, like my keep an eye game. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on this one because I think the opportunity for Swans to maybe throw a few waves into the competition could be perfect here. Another cracking game at Leaderville Oval as East Perth take on South Fremantle. I'm going to go East Perth in this one. Leaderville Oval, they're at home. South Fremantle again. They're in such a hole. How are the coaching staff going to be able to get this group up knowing that they're in such a deficit to start off with because of the things there? I think this isn't going to help going on the road against a tough East Perth team. I think East Perth just a little too good in this one. I got the Royals.
Yeah, I think the same. Me too. It's pretty much a make or break game already this early in the season for South. I think if they don't get up this one, I think they're going to be finding it way too hard to get into the finals. So a big win, big game for South Fremantle, but I think East Perth will be probably too strong for South. And again, a close game. I reckon there's only a couple of goals in this one as well.
Alrighty, we'll jump. Mineral Resources Park is Perth host West Perth in this one. Who do you got winning this one?
Well, Perth will be looking for back-to-back victories, which is very rare for the Demons the last few years, that's for sure. But West Perth, here's a good one for you, Donnie. West Perth have not lost to Perth since 2004 at Laflane Park, so nearly 20 years. So they have had a draw in that run. There was a draw in 2008. But yeah, 18 games now in a row. West Perth have not been able to, well, sorry, Perth have not been able to beat West Perth at their home ground. And this will not be another one. This will be another one. So West Perth will win this convincingly. I reckon round seven goals, I think, for West Perth in a big win.
Yeah, you get West Coast. You would think some confidence into Perth. You think Perth will come out snarling in the first quarter, but I think West Perth just a little
Yeah.
too much talent, little too good. I
Yep.
got the Falcons winning this one. The old cracking rival, Peel Thunder, aka Fremantle Reserves at Lane Group Stadium, taking on their bitter rivals, the West Coast Eagles. Peel big, Peel big, Peel just too good.
Yep. I'm going for a triple figure victory for the Thunder.
Alrighty.
Less said about this game, the better. Let's move on.
All right, and over to the WACA for another cracking one that I really am looking forward to keeping an eye on, and that is East Fremantle Sharks versus the Subi Lions. I'm looking at this one, thinking and thinking on this one. Just East Fremantle's lack of goal kicking and in their waywardness, I think is going to get them. Yes, they may be at home, but I'm going to have the Lions winning this one. I think East Fremantle's in it, but I think the Lions just too strong.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be a bit of a close game as well. The Wacker, it's not really a home ground for East Fremantle, so they don't really have much advantage there. I think Subi will get over the line on this one. East Fremantle's last quarter's inaccurate kicking, like you've mentioned, it's been a bit of an issue for them. If they straighten their kicking up, this could be a good win for the Sharks, but I think Subi will be too good for this one.
All righty, we'll jump over to the women's a little bit easier tipping on this one because of the way it's going. But a couple of crackers. We'll start off Claremont on the road at Link Group Stadium against Peel. Claremont too good, Claremont too strong. I'll take the Claremont on this one.
Yep, the same. Yeah, Claremont easily. I think Peel is not performing very well recently, so I think Claremont an easy victory for them.
All right, East Perth take on South Fremantle and another one that unfortunately is just not going to be close. South Fremantle get a nice little easy win to get some confidence back into the Bulldogs.
Yep, a percentage booster here for South Fremantle. Hopefully, East Perth can get a couple of goals in this one, which would be good for them. But yeah, South by a mile.
Yeah, and then probably game of the round also at the WACA, South Fremantle versus Subi. This is one I've had to bounce back and forth a little bit. Who do you think? Who do you like in this one?
So yeah, East Fremantle and Subi there, Donnie. Yep. So East Fremantle, um, I think East Fremantle may be just in this one. Could well be another draw the way we're going, but I think maybe East Fremantle in a low scoring game may just get over the line against Subi in that one.
Yeah, Subi's one loss was a little bit. They have three losses here. East Fremantle's played some really tough opponents. I'm going to take East Fremantle in this one, but I agree. I think this one's an absolute cracker down to the fourth quarter. And we go to it. Final game of the round. Can they keep the winning streak alive? Can the Swans go on the road and beat West Perth? I think so. I think the Swans keep it going. This is another game that they should win. Just hope for no stumbles in this one because I think your finals chances really hinge on making sure you get
Mm.
this win right here. You cannot drop this one against a pesky West Perth team.
Yeah, totally agree with you there, Donny. Yeah, this is a big game for Swans. If they lose this, they'll drop it out by a game and a half rather than half a game because either East Fremantle or Subi will get a win. Yeah, I can see Swans winning this one. And West Perth may a loss for West Perth will probably kick them out of the chance in the finals. But five in a row for Swans for this game.
Yeah, definitely, which will definitely keep that top five there for the final four spots in definitely in a crack at the end of the year. That is going to do it, Rick. Another absolutely fantastic chat. I know we had to get up early for you to have this chat here, but I genuinely appreciate you coming on. again, how is everything going with the website? I know that with a new season, more and more data has to go in quite quickly.
Yeah, no, excuse me. Yeah, it's really good, Donnie. So, yeah, getting some good numbers on the website. So I'm doing, I've got weekly previews and weekly reviews. So if you want to know, if you like your stats, anyone listening out there like your stats and your numbers and some historical data, then jump on and have a look at the weekly reviews all around the numbers of the week. So any key numbers from any of the games, that's on there. I'm working also on adding some more streak data into my website. So I'm always working adding player records or new data or different tables on the website. So keep an eye on the website, wafflefootyfacts.net. You can check out the updates page for all the latest information and what I'm working on as I continue to expand the website.
Fantastic. And absolutely it is, it blows my mind sometimes going on there because of all the information that you have. But for somebody that loves footy, I love to hop on there and just kind of take a look at some of the old results and how things are going. So I genuinely appreciate everything that you do there, Rick. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, that is going to end our second episode of Waffle Wrap Up. Again, we're going to keep an eye out and keep talking waffle, keep talking state league footy because I think this is important to talk about these state leagues. They have fantastic footy and some great people. Hard to say that a gentleman from Des Moines, Iowa, talking with a gentleman in Perth, Western Australia is not one of the coolest things ever. So I genuinely appreciate this. And for all the people that watch out in WA, thank you so much for sitting down and having a listen to this little podcast here. So genuinely appreciate it. That is going to do it. Rick, have a wonderful, wonderful day out in Perth today, sir.
No worries. You too, Don. Have a good evening, and we'll speak again in a few weeks' time, and hopefully some more Swannies victories to talk about.
Awesome. Cannot wait as we get closer and closer to as we get closer and closer into the season to finals and all that in both competitions. So that's going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals Waffle Wrap Up. And we will see you again very, very soon.